should have retitled the sermon Responses to Life instead of Life's Responses. But I'm conscious sometimes that Wayne only has so many letters that he can put on the sign out front. And so sometimes I try to shorten it and I move it around and I mess up. But in the story of the healed blind man's reception among his friends and family and the Pharisees, I would suggest to you that there are 4 different ways to respond to life. I want to share those responses with you today. First, there are the nitpickers. Okay? The nitpickers. And some of you school teachers and parents know where the term nitpicking comes from. It comes from the notorious head louse. And each tiny nit or egg that must be meticulously combed or picked or pulled from a single strand of hair out of a squealing, embarrassed 6-year-old. Unfortunately, many people have perfected the art of nitpicking so completely that they feel compelled to demonstrate their skill in every situation in life. Nitpickers are always noting what is wrong with something or someone rather than what is right. They can't enjoy anything, especially anything that has a flaw in it. With little sense of humor, these pickiness people are always looking for spiritual or theological or moral doctrines to flaunt at others. And the nitpickers in John's story of the blind man are the Pharisees at their first inquisition in verse 16. Instead of rejoicing with this man at the miracle of regained sight, they can only focus at the possible infractions of the biblical law that made it possible. Jesus healed on the Sabbath. An accomplished nitpicker can burst any celebratory balloon. Dawn and I haven't been back to our home church for quite some time. In fact, it has been several years, I think. And so we went back, and one of the ladies on welcoming us back said to me, "It's so great to see you. You put on some weight, haven't you?" You laugh like you know what I'm talking about. Nitpickers. Or you might hear, "Congratulations on your new promotion, but you still got an awful lot of ladder to climb, don't you?" Or maybe something like this: "The new sanctuary looks wonderful. Of course we'll probably never grow enough to fill it or to pay for it." Nitpickers. Deflating joy. Tarnishing accomplishments. That's what nitpickers do the best. Then we've got these folks and their response. We've got the wound lickers. Wound lickers. You remember ever getting a scratch or a cut as a kid and your parents have repeated warnings not to pick at it? I remember when our boys were small. Of course, they had to keep telling us over and over and over again because there's something self-destructively fascinating about an open wound. It wasn't too long ago Ethan fell on the sidewalk playing. Oh my goodness, he had a heck of a scabby place on his knee. Comes down to visit us. What's Mom all have to do? Quit picking at that scab, Ethan. You know, it's just a kid. You want to pick at it, you know. We're drawn to it. We want to mess with it. We want to re-examine it. We want to pull the scab off a little bit to see if it's healing. But that fixation can easily lead to infection or to death. I can remember the first time I ever saw a cone on a dog's neck. I thought, what do they got that horn around that dog's neck for? I didn't know. And I asked him, what's that for? I was told it was to keep the dog from licking his incision and tearing it open. In dogs and cats, wound licking can undo in a matter of minutes all the work that a vet has put days into. And you put a lot of dollars into as well. condition of blindness, they're being wound lickers. They can't leave the situation alone, but keep returning to it, trying to expose some imagined wrong. These Pharisees do not even realize that the wound that they are reopening is a gaping hole. A gaping hole of their own ignorance and spiritual blindness. Next in our four responses to life are the goodness sakers. You've heard of people say, "Oh my goodness, goodness sakes, goodness sakes." Remember the old story? I remember it some time ago. Someone told me. You may not remember it, but I'd like to share it with you. Of the old mother, the mother who had to leave her children in the house for a few minutes. And before leaving, she ordered the children, "Now, don't put beans up your nose while I'm going." Left to their own devices, the kids would probably never come up with such a bizarre idea. But since the mother singled it out, the children were inspired. And of course, when Mom returned home, they were rolling around on the floor in pain with beans packed up their nose. Now, there's a distinct category of people who inspire similar kinds of contrary behavior in us, and they're the goodness sakers, self-appointed crusaders for the promotion of righteousness. They consider themselves, and let all the rest of us know it, they consider themselves to be super spiritual. Historian H.G. Wells complained about the people he called the goodness sakers. These are the people who stood around, these were the people who stood around saying, "For goodness sakes, why doesn't somebody do something?" Or, "For goodness sakes, look at what they're doing." Few people can be as infuriating and sin-provoking as the goodness sakers. Smart aleck remarks and visions of dirty tricks seem to float to the tops of our minds, all by themselves, as we listen to the platitudes and the puffed-up piety goodness sakers blow at us. The Pharisees in John's story haughtily invoke their relationship to Moses as a sign of their spiritual superiority. Oh, we're disciples of Moses. The healed man who had shown great self-control up to this point is at last driven to jab back at these upright, uptight, self-appointed guardians of do-gooding. As usual, the goodness sakers, however, don't even get the point of the sarcasm that's directed their way. And finally, lastly, we have the arm wavers. In response to life, we have the arm wavers. Thank heavens that besides the nitpickers, the wound lickers, and the goodness sakers, we have the arm wavers. They are the people who celebrate victories and lend support in times of defeat. Arm wavers hoot and holler when their child's little league team wins the big game. But they also give great hugs and it's okay looks when the team loses 10 in a row. It's not that arm wavers don't see all the imperfections in the hand-knitted, 2 sizes too large sweater or in life. It's just that they focus on all the beauty that surrounds the flaws instead of the flaws themselves. You and I are imperfect people. We live in an imperfect world. There's sure a lot of beauty around us. We would just focus on it. It's amazing how the arm wavers are absent for so long from John's story of the healed blind man. Here's a stunning miracle. A blind man, since birth, suddenly given sight. And no one celebrates. Not one person. No, not one person celebrates. His neighbors are doubtful. His parents are worried about the legal and religious ramifications. While the Pharisees find the whole episode threatening and foreboding. Not until body weight. He falls to his knees and he worships the Lord. Nitpicker. Wound licker. Goodness sake. Arm waver. Question this morning is, which are you? Which are you? In the midst of our nitpicking, wound licking, goodness sake,